Greetings. We're delighted to have you back with us. I'm Scott Hafner here in the cellar next to my brother Park, who's the winemaker, along with Sarah, and we're looking forward to having an enjoyable afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are, tasting a number of new releases. We haven't done a Zoom for a year and a half. But it is one of the things that we learned during COVID, and it's a delightful way to be in touch with you. We're expecting about 85 patrons and friends this afternoon, and we have old family friends, neighbors, new patrons, two sisters, and a lot of other people in between. And we thought we would during this presentation, we thought it would be fun to ask you a number of questions. So here's the first one. We're starting easy and they'll get progressively harder. And we'd love to just know where people are, in what time zone, and wow, okay, everybody's eager to go. And there are the results. We want to encourage you to use the Q&A and the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Q&A is a way for you to ask us questions that we'll be addressing during the latter part of the presentation. And the chat function allows you to communicate with other people that are on the Zoom with us. Just a reminder that this is in presentation mode, which means that you can see us, but we can't see you and no one else can see you. So you can have as much fun and as uproariously enjoyable time as you like. And these are the wines that we'll be tasting today: the 2020 Reserve Chardonnay, the 2022 Rosé, and the 2018 Cabernet, all of which have been released this year. And Park and Sarah will taste those with you. We encourage you to open them up, get started, in case you haven't already. And then Kate, who's the master behind the screen and organized all this, has put together this curriculum. Sounds so official. You will not get any academic credit though. These are the topics that we'll be covering today. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the two professional tasters who will guide you through the wines.
Hi. Sarah will be joining us shortly. She just ran upstairs to get our cheat sheet. And I'm hoping that you're already starting off with some of the wines. We're going to start tasting here with the Reserve Chardonnay. It's the 2020 vintage that we're tasting. And just to tell you a little bit about the wine and how it's made and the inspiration, you can see on the map there that the grapes for the Chardonnay, the Reserve Chardonnay, come from a block we call a house Dijon 76. Dijon 76 is the clone, came from, Dijon in France. And you'll see the specifications there, planted in 2006, and how many acres we have of each. The inspiration for the Reserve Chardonnay came from an internship, or was a result of an internship that I had in France. Prior to that, I'd studied winemaking at UC Davis, then worked for 2 years in Napa Valley, and then Sarah and I got married and we took a working honeymoon to France. And I worked in a very small winery in the town of Meursault, which is sort of Chardonnay central in France. And they had rather antiquated equipment, by California standards at the time, and no scientific technique to my eye. Remember, I was 25 and knew pretty much everything there was to know about winemaking already. But they make the best Chardonnay I've ever had. So we thought it would be fun to take their techniques, try it on our juice, wine, and see what became of it. So it's not a selection of the best barrels or the best fruit. It's kind of a different routine from our main Chardonnay from day one. So there'll be several photographs that you can look at as we're going along here. The grapes are harvested usually in September. They're brought back to the winery in a gondola. And you see the photograph, the third one on the top there. That gondola holds about 2 to 2.5 tons. The grapes then go through a fruit sorter, which Ricardo is standing next to. And that removes anything other than grapes, normally just a few stems and leaves, because the same fruit sorter is also mounted on our machine harvester. The juice and skins then are transferred to one of our 2 presses, which is where we separate the juice from the skins. The juice that comes out of the press is pretty cloudy. We want to start fermentation with a relatively clear juice. So we'll settle that juice overnight, and then the next morning we'll rack it to barrels. And racking means that you pump the clear juice, in this case, off of the sediment, leaving the sediment behind. And then during fermentation, Sarah checks the progress of each of our fermentations daily and tastes every lot as she's testing it for sugar. And I mentioned I went to UC Davis. One of the most important things I learned at Davis is that women are more critical when it comes to aromas and flavors. And one of the most important things I've learned in 40 plus years of marriage is that always defer to your wife, especially when she's right. So I'm going to let Sarah describe this wine to you because I know she has a better palate than I do.
So, hello, I hope you're enjoying the rosé, the Reserve. Excuse me, I'm excited to try the rosé as well. It's fun because it's a 2020, so to me it's pretty young and fruit forward. I get some nice candied lemon peel, Daphne blossoms, a little Charente melon, and that nice toasted brioche quality that comes from barrel fermentation. The malolactic fermentation, that is the secondary fermentation that lowers the acidity, gives the wine a nice creaminess and roundness. It's a lower acid. There's malic acid in grapes, and we convert it with a bacteria to lactic acid, the same acid in butter and milk. So it has sort of a roundness, a softness, and a creaminess. We do what's called batonnage or lee stirring, and it gives the wine, every 2 weeks we do this before we top, and it gives the wine what I describe as a flinty quality. Park and I do a lot of hiking in the Sierras, and you think of 2 rocks hitting each other, that's what the flintiness is. And in the finish, I get a really nice sweet vanilla toastiness that comes from that extended barrel aging that Park talked about.
Here's a little diagram of some of the differences that we see between the main Chardonnay and the Reserve Chardonnay programs, just for your information. But here's one of the polls that Scott talked about. Sarah can introduce it for us.
It's on what flavors and aromas that you're smelling and tasting. So we can't vote, but you can. Is there a little melon, a little grapefruit, pear? And Kate will, once you voted, Kate will bring back the results and we'll see what y'all think. What do you think? What are you finding?
Finding citrus, grapefruit, a little bit of flintiness
Mhm.
in the wine. Hopefully people are finding some of those, but maybe you'll have some other descriptors that more accurately reflect how you feel about these wines.
The thing about wine tasting that you have to remember is it reminds you of. Maybe you haven't been hiking in the Sierra. Oh, let's see what we see. Grapefruit melon. Oh, okay, cool. Great. So if you haven't been hiking in the Sierras, you don't know what I'm talking about with flinty, but two rocks or lighting a match or whatever, that's sort of the aroma that I'm talking about. Oh, creme brulee on the finish. I agree. Good call.
Our vineyard manager, David, has prepared a little video for your viewing pleasure about this year's growing season so far. And Kate will put it
Start
up.
it.
Hello everyone, this is David Hubel from Hafner Vineyard. I'm the vineyard manager here, and welcome to the 2023 vintage, the beginning of my 14th vintage here at Hafner Vineyard. So as you may have heard, the last 3 years here in California have been plagued with extreme drought. In my 20 years of growing grapes, it was absolutely the worst drought conditions that I've ever seen, and thankfully the 2022-2023 winter brought us well above normal rainfall, and it was nice because it didn't come all at once. In fact, for getting 60+ inches of rain this winter, there wasn't one time that the river flooded and closed the road in the way to get to town. So all things considered, it was a perfect scenario. So along with all that rain, this winter saw several periods of really low temperatures, below normal for winter around here, and as a result the vines really went into dormancy this year, and we ended up with bud burst, the latest that I can ever remember, about a week later than the previous latest bud burst that I had ever seen. And right out of the gate, growth was quite slow. Bud break often takes 2 to 3 weeks for the period that I normally think of as bud burst. It's when the growth is really quite small, and then it sort of gets to about here and really takes off, and that's what we refer to as the rapid growth phase, and that's where we are right now. And we're coming into the period that's referred to as bloom or florescence. Here we are in some Malbec, and in fact things are just starting to bloom here. Our Chardonnay is at about 10 or 15%, and the red varieties are just getting started. Okay, so in addition to lots of rain this year, the rain continued fairly late into the season, and we're always very careful not to get into the vineyard with machinery and tractors for all the work on the vineyard floor that we have to do too early when there's too much moisture in the soil, because that leads to compaction and other problems. One of the cultural practices that we use here at Hafner Vineyard is we avoid the use of herbicides in the vineyard, and instead we use machines to cultivate underneath the rows. Now, one benefit of that cultural practice is in a year like this, when the rapid growth phase is going to be accelerated by all that excess water that we receive during the winter, I can choose to not cultivate for a little bit longer and do some competition from the weeds and grasses that are growing and slow down some of that growth. And so we're only just now getting started with cultivation, which is probably about 4 to 6 weeks later than a normal year. You might notice that this row that I'm standing in has quite a few rather beautiful flowers. This is another of the cultural practices that we do here at Hafner Vineyard. These flowers were intentionally sown in this row in order to attract beneficial insects. And we've had some trouble over the last 5 or 6 years getting these rows to germinate. And so this last winter, we tried a new approach. We had one of our employees, Benito, sit on the back of our side-by-side ATV and use a small broadcast seeder to put the seed out. And as you can see, it worked. So as we approach Memorial Day weekend here, we're working really hard on canopy management. All that winter rain has led to really quite aggressive growth. I'm actually quite surprised to see how much of this canopy has already reached the top wire up here. So we'll be working aggressively on that as the vines go through the bloom period. Hopefully we've got a really great fruit set, and we can take a look at the progress sometime in July.
And we're back. We hope you enjoyed that little snapshot from David about how things are progressing in the vineyard and what the winter weather has brought to us. We're pretty happy about all the rain. Well, I should say I am anyway. The hills stayed green so much longer this year than in previous years, and only now have just started turning brown. But on to the next wine, which is our 2022 Rosé of Malbec. And in a red grape, the color and the flavor is mainly contained in the skins. So we want to farm for small berries, because the higher the skin to juice ratio is, the more intense the flavor will be in the wine. Well, Malbec is a rather large berried varietal, regardless of what you do. So one of the things that we do at harvest to increase the skin to juice ratio is we pull some of the juice off away from the grapes right when they arrive at the winery, and thereby make a more intense red wine. Well, over the years, we decided to make a rosé out of that juice. And starting in 2011 and every year since then, we've been making rosé. So we pull some of that juice out right as the grapes arrive back at the fruit sorter at the winery. Then that juice is settled overnight in tanks, racked, and then we add yeast to get fermentation started. Over the years, we have increased our production of rosé to the point where we would be bleeding too much juice away from the red wine. We bleed about 15% away. But now that we make about 1,000 cases of rosé, we need to augment that by taking some of the Malbec grapes and sending them direct to the press like we would a white wine, press them immediately and settle that juice overnight and rack it as well. So we use the two main techniques for rosé production, bleeding and direct to press. The other way is when you blend red wine with white wine, which is usually referred to as a whoops in the industry. So, and then the juice is fermented in a stainless steel cold to retain the lovely varietal characters that we get from Malbec. Here are a few more photographs of the Malbec grapes and some of the equipment that we work with. And then this is bottled about 5 or 6 months after harvest, and then held for a few months before we release it. So I'll turn it over to Sarah to describe what we find in this wine.
Now that all the winter rains are behind us, Park and I are really enjoying the 2022 Rosé. And I think it opens really bright, fruit-forward bouquet. And I describe it as watermelon or Jolly Rancher watermelon, if you've ever had those, and powdered candies. My grandmother used to, on a special occasion, give us powdered candy, little powdered candies. So it always reminds me of my grandmama. And I think it has some nice ripe strawberries and a little rose petal. I think it's really bright and lively on the palate so that it's fresh, and there's a nice suppleness in the mid palate, but it has a really lovely, long, lingering finish that makes it perfect to have dinner with it, or sometimes we save some for Thanksgiving. So we have a rosé pole here. And the questions are when do you drink rosé? Year round, during the summer, or not much of a fan? So you guys vote and we'll taste and enjoy.
Scott's going to step in here for a moment.
Oh, there's the results. Year round, we call that job security, good, and during the summer months. And we perhaps it's just this audience saying a very small portion of you are not rosé fans. I will say that years ago, when we approached our parents, when we were thinking of making the rosé commercially, and they looked at us like we were crazy, Park and I, because all they could remember was a very different rosé in style 20 or 30 years ago that was not the fresh, bright, wonderful rosé that we modestly feel is true of our rosé. One of the things that's really delightful about our business model is that we're in such close contact with all of you. And we just wanted to share a few pictures that we've received from patrons out on Lake Michigan with a bottle of rosé, in Hawaii with the Reserve Chardonnay, a card shark playing and enjoying the Cabernet, and then a very creative group of friends, a few of which are Hafner Vineyard patrons, who did a wine tasting of 4 different Hafner Cabernets. And then everybody gets to be an expert, because whatever you like is the right thing. But then they divide it up into groups with their preference for a particular year. If you're ever interested in doing that, or you're ever interested in filling holes in your cellar with particular vintages, just give Kate or me a call. We're happy to find older vintages for you. Spring is one of the 2 most wonderful times to visit the wine country, harvest and the fall being the other. And spring is also when we host a series of barrel tastings here at the winery as a way to thank patrons who are on the annual tasting program or who've purchased a case of wine or more in the previous year. If you haven't ever been to a barrel tasting, consider this your invitation. We'd love to have you join us. And we thought it would be fun to give you a little sense of the barrel tastings. So Kate shot a video, and which we'll share now, and buckle up.
Springtime is barrel tasting time here at Hafner Vineyard. We thought we would show you the getting ready, the cleanup, but the best part in between, which is all our patrons. So stay tuned.
On Saturday mornings before barrel tastings, I head out to the Healdsburg Farmers Market to pick up strawberries. Then I'm off to the winery. Here you go.
The barrel tastings are our way of thanking patrons who are on the annual tasting program or have purchased about a case of wine or more in the previous year. We began the barrel tastings in the mid-1980s. It's a full day of fun, setup. The best part is seeing people, and then some quick cleanup at the end.
So here I am at the winery. We're getting ready. We have Justin Bingham, a friend who's helping us set up, and Uncle Scott. It's a beautiful day. Glad to have a little bit of fog. Should be gorgeous. Looking forward to seeing you.
At the barrel tastings, we shared the 2019 Chardonnay, the 2020 Reserve Chardonnay, our 2022 Rosé, 2 Cabernets, one from 2012 and the other from 2018, as well as our 2018 Next Red.
We're all set up in the Grove. Dad's in the caves pulling some barrel samples for the tours and tastings. Let's see what he's doing.
I'm pulling samples here out of, we're going to taste 2 samples, both 22 barrel fermented Chardonnay, Reserve Chardonnay. One of the samples is out of a new barrel, one is out of a older, what we call a neutral barrel, to show the impact of new barrels on the wine. And hopefully people will notice that not only do you pick up some aromatics and some flavor of the oak, but it also adds some richness to the wine, a little bit of sweetness from the sugars in the oak, and it kind of fills up the mid palate.
My grandmother Mary loved cooking for the barrel tastings, so we still make most of the food ourselves and follow her recipes. My mom Sarah roasts the almonds and does the flowers. My dad Park makes hummus, salsa verde, and anchoyade for the grilled snacks, while I make cookies and olives. It's definitely a team effort.
Oh, hi. Welcome to the barrel tasting. My name is Dan. I've been here for 14 years working with the wonderful Hafner family at Hafner Vineyard. At the barrel tastings, we hope you'll enjoy our grilled shrimp that's wrapped with pancetta, sauced with a salsa verde, the Italian salsa verde, capers, shallots, olive oil, and lemon. Delicious. Mary's popular recipe. And don't forget our crostini of grilled bread from the local bakery, little beef tri-tip, and aioli called enchoyade, aioli flavored with Kalamata olives and capers. So please join us, and don't forget to pick up some of your Hafner wine.
So I'm Tiff.
I'm Fia.
And she's my daughter.
She's my mom.
We are also part of the Hafner family because my husband and her father is the vineyard manager of Hafner Vineyard. And I've been doing this for, I think, 13 years. Had the first daughter here for many years, and now this is the second version.
I started last year.
And I'm here because I love the Hafner clientele every year, and I love working with the Hafner family, and it's just a very special event every year. So, and it's family ties, like just
Family
keep bringing
community.
more in.
And then they have their room, and then they have this kind of a living space. Oh, no way. Beautiful. Thank you.
At the barrel tastings, Park and I give tours starting here in the Grove. And we're always impressed by the curiosity and the questions that we get from our patrons. They are very knowledgeable, but they're always willing to learn more, and that's the fun thing for Park and me during the tours. And also, the great thing is that we become friends. We don't have the wholesaler distributor route, so we know the people who buy our wine and have a direct connection with them. We gather in the Grove, and we're Park, as you can see here, or I talk about a little bit about the history and grape growing, and then we head into the winery.
There has to be somebody standing outside the tank.
We talk about the wine production that we're focusing on that day, whether it's Chardonnay, Reserve Chardonnay, Cabernet, or our reds. And then we head into the caves. The caves are the next part of the tour, which is my favorite part because I never get tired of walking in to the caves because they're so beautiful, they smell so wonderful, and it's where the magic happens.
The barrel tastings are a high point of our year, something that we look forward to for months. We see longtime patrons, meet new friends, people who have been coming year after year, and others who are just being introduced to our wines for the first time. It's a treat for us to make those connections year after year and face to face.
And we're back. We hope you've been enjoying the wine so far, and we're moving on now to the 2018 Cabernet. The Cabernet, our grapes come from a block that we call the Kellogg block, which was named after the previous owner, Ted Kellogg. And we chose to plant clone 4 in that block, which we love. And the ground there is very well suited for red wine production. It's very rocky, well drained. As you can see in the map, there's a little creek that runs along the edge of our vineyard. Well, that creek used to meander through the vineyard, well, long time ago, but it left an alluvial fan in the vineyard, which, as I said, is just great for growing red grapes, because the good drainage means that the vines don't have abundant moisture to start the growing season with, which is when the berry size is set. So it tends to produce nice small berries, which is, as I mentioned earlier, what we're really striving for when we grow red grapes for red wine production. The grapes are picked by machine. They're brought back to the winery. They go through the fruit sorter, but then to produce a red wine, you have to ferment the skins with the juice, because the color is actually contained in the skins. So we'll pump the juice and the skins together into the fermenters and add yeast to get fermentation started. One of the byproducts of fermentation is carbon dioxide gas. And in the case of a red wine fermentation, as that gas bubbles up through the fermenting juice, it becomes trapped in the trapped in the skins, causing the skins to float to the top of the tank, forming what's known as the cap. So if we didn't employ some means to mix the cap and the fermenting juice, we wouldn't get the color and flavor extraction we're looking for. So we do what are called pump overs. And there's a picture of me there on the bottom, draining wine out of the bottom of the tank, and then we have a pump and hoses and a stainless steel sprinkler that then sprinkles that fermenting juice over the cap and allows it to percolate down through the skin, extracting what we're looking for. And we'll do about 3 to 4 pump overs a day at the peak of fermentation. And then by the end of fermentation, we will have tapered off to 1 pump over a day. And then we'll continue. That'll take about 7 to 10 days to that point. And then we'll continue doing 1 short pump over each day, just to mix the tank enough to get a good representative sample of how the wine is progressing. And then when we feel it's at the right point, we'll then drain the wine out of the fermentation tank and then hoe out and shovel the skins into the press. And you can see Ricardo is hoeing the skins out of the bottom of the tank. And then that wine is settled overnight, or maybe two nights, and then it's racked to barrels in the caves. And the red wine undergoes malolactic fermentation, as does the Reserve Chardonnay. And it's aged during its first year 100% in barrels, oak barrels, about 90% of which are French oak and about 10% are American oak. And then during the second year, about half of the wine would be in barrels and half of it would be in oak tanks, like the tanks you see behind us here. And then the wine is bottled about 2 months shy of 2 years from harvest, and is then bottle aged for about 2.5 years before we release it. So the 2018 was released just a few months ago. That's our current release.
I really enjoy the youthfulness of the Cabernet, the 2018. It's really fruit forward. It has some nice blackberry, Bing cherries, a little cassis. And, oh, Kate's just put up a poll. At what age do you typically enjoy Cabernet? And you guys can decide. Personally, Park and I like our Cabernets at about 10 years old because we just like older wine. Maybe it's because we're now old. Older, not old, just older. And when I taste this wine, I really want it to fill out the mouth and be round and enjoyable. And I think we've accomplished that very well. It's bright and lively. There's some flavors of dark chocolate, a little Picholine olives, a little nutmeg, and steak tartare, which gives it complexity. And similar to our other wines, we really work to get a nice, long, lingering finish so that when you finish the wine, you still are enjoying it. Oh, look what, okay, 5 to 10 is the winner, and we're in the second place group. We didn't. But yeah, as a wine ages, it loses some of that bright fruitiness and all the lovely winemaking components come to the fore. But Park's dad always, when he was at our house for dinner, always enjoyed the younger wines. Sometimes we opened 2 bottles, an old one for us, a young one for him. He didn't drink it all.
But we're hoping that you've enjoyed all 3 of these wines today. And we have a little video here. We polled the crew, the team here at Hafner Vineyard, as to which were their favorite wines. And here's a little video response that we got that Kate put together.
Cabernet.
Rosé.
El vino Cabernet a mí me encanta.
Rosé.
Cabernet.
Reserve Chardonnay.
Cabernet. Reserve Chardonnay.
Cabernet.
Rosé.
Chardonnay.
Cabernet.
Rosé. Me gusta el vino Cabernet.
Reserve Chardonnay.
Rosé.
Chardonnay. Cabernet.
Rosé.
Oh, that's a difficult question, but I think I'd have to say the Reserve Chardonnay.
Thanks for suffering through our technological challenges. You can definitely tell who the 60-plus-year-old people are. So now you heard from the crew, both in the winery and the vineyard, and now you're in the hot seat. We're curious to know what you are enjoying right now. And Kate's got another poll for you. This is just like college, you know, endless polls, endless exams. This is hard work.
I think it's showing that.
Oh, here comes the pitter patter of little feet. It's our director and social media wizard, just descending from the international headquarters upstairs to put us on the straight and narrow.
No, it's not working for me. We've been doing polls, and of course now the most important poll won't come up for you. So in the chat, feel free to send us your favorite wine, and we'll do some questions. And if for some reason Zoom decides to cooperate with me, I don't know, maybe we maxed out, we broke Zoom on the quizzes.
We were doing so well, it looked like we weren't having connectivity problems like we sometimes do here in the country. But so yeah, we were curious, is it Rosé, Reserve Chardonnay, or Cabernet that's your favorite?
All right, we've got some Cabernet. Let's see.
Chicago's checking in.
Reserve
Also-
Chardonnay. Oh my gosh, you're breaking the chat. Rosé, Chardonnay, love it, love it.
New Jersey, Washington, DC. My God.
I love this. Like a family, you know, there are 3 of them there and they each voted for a different one.
It's like the
so.
British Empire, you know, the sun never sets on where Hafner patrons are.
Awesome. Well, feel free to keep using the chat, sharing your favorite. There is also this feature called the Q&A feature, and that's where I will ask Dad and Uncle Scott questions. My mom, Sarah, who's just here, is upstairs, and she'll type some of them and she'll let us know which ones we're gonna want to answer. So the first question was, Park, as you've seen the vines age over the few decades, how has the aging influenced the wines, both flavor and structure?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I don't know if I could actually say with any certainty how it's changed that much. Maybe on the Cabernet, the wines or the tannins have become a little softer with the vines now being older, but I think that the difference from year to year is more attributable to the vintage, the weather that year than it is to the increasing age of the vines. And we've had to replant some of the blocks over the years. So we've, you know, it's hard to do a side-by-side trial as to be able to say with any certainty what impact that age of the vine has had. Sorry.
Let's see, what will be the effect of the 2023 vintage with all the rain and the cool days during winter?
Well, we're certainly getting a late start to the growing season. We're about 2 weeks, I think, behind where we would normally be, which in all likelihood will mean harvest will start a couple of weeks later. Not something we look forward to because it gets us closer to cold nights and also brings us further into the wildfire season, both of which are issues that we worry about a lot during harvest. But I think that you know, having a lot of moisture in the ground in those blocks that don't drain as well means we'll have larger berries, which is mainly the white grape blocks, and that's fine for them. So I'm happy about having lots of moisture in the ground to start the growing season with. I think it'll be a good vintage, at least I hope so.
This is for you, Uncle Scott. Are you growing enough Chardonnay to serve all of your Chardonnay fans coming from
a neighbor
Chardonnay?
who's very concerned about this. And since she's the closest, she can just walk over and get Chardonnay. So she's kind of at the head of the line. So we're not worried about her. But yes, we're growing enough Chardonnay, and we love that patrons are so enthusiastic about the wines, and they still sell out very quickly. But we're making enough to keep everybody satisfied, and we're grateful for your thirst.
Yeah, thanks.
And I would add that we sell about half the grapes we grow, so we make sure that we have enough for our needs always.
Someone was asking what is your favorite time of year for visitors here?
The first and third Friday of each month at 2 o'clock. We have a standing tour. Sarah normally gives the tour. It's a very intimate way to see what a small family winery is. But spring is really a wonderful time to visit. The fall is really wonderful. You know, in many respects, you can't go wrong. We feel, we pinch ourselves regularly that we get to live in such a beautiful part of the world. And there's something special about every season, but fall and spring are probably the 2 top ones.
We hope you'll come visit. With the changing environmental conditions, how are you doing things differently?
Well, I'd have to say that the main changes that we're implementing in the vineyard are trellising. We are trying to shade the vines a little bit more with the canopy, as opposed to 20 years ago when we were trying to open the canopy a little bit more to get more sunlight on the fruit. Yeah, so canopy management, trellis system, those are the main things. I'm looking forward to the day when we'll have a battery operated tractor out there, or 2 or 3, which will be a nice way to hopefully make an impact on a positive impact on the environment.
It's an interesting question. One more thing I would add to that is that I think the idea behind the question is what's the impact of the changing environment? But another piece is what are we doing about it? We're very fortunate to have the next generation involved in the life of our business. And Kate really and Park have taken the lead on making sure that we're doing everything possible to reduce our carbon footprint all the time. We can't use paper napkins now when we have a cup of coffee. We have to use cloth napkins. No detail is too small. And you'll read about this on the blog.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in that we have solar panels that they put in 20 years ago or so that provide about 1/3 of our energy use. And the other 70%, 2/3 of our energy use comes from a local power company that sources only renewable, clean, local power. So that was a big one for us. We had a question about how the Cabernet tastes differently based on the different blocks.
Well, I should say we've been just taking fruit from the Kellogg Clone 4 block for the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years, because we love, as I mentioned earlier, the soil, the drainage, the age of the vines in that block. So I can't really say. Back in the day when we made, when that block wasn't planted, we were drawing from a couple of different blocks, but hopefully all of our different Cabernet blocks are appreciated by the wineries that buy them, and we get nothing but positive feedback from other wineries about the Cabernet grapes we sell them.
We had a few questions that came in by email beforehand. One of them was, how do you sell your wine, and why did you choose to do it that way? And maybe speak to that, Uncle Scott.
When we first started out, we made the decision to sell direct to people, not go through any distributors or retailers, not have anyone else represent us but ourselves. We felt that we would do the best job at that and the most consistent job. So in 1984, when we entered the market, it was direct to people at home. And that accounts for about 94% of our business. So let's be really clear, our patrons are really important to us, for which we're so grateful. We sell about 5% of the wine that we make direct to restaurants just within the state of California. And we did that, we sell direct not only because we wanted to sort of retain control of the relationship with our patrons, but one of the things that we did not foresee is just how rewarding that would be emotionally, obviously financially rewarding also. But one of the greatest surprises for us is just how much fun it is working directly with our patrons, and frankly, how humbling it is that our wine has a place in our patrons' lives, which, you know, you see in those photographs that we shared earlier.
And on the heels of that, one of the things that's meant a lot to me is seeing how multi-generational the wine has become. So while, you know, I'm the third generation here, I know many of you are families that are watching and tuning in with multiple generations, and that means a lot to us. This question says, I believe it's directed to you. Dude, can you take a bow for your Reserve Chardonnay? I mean, year in and year out. It is outstanding. Can you bow?
I won't bow, but I will say thank you very much. I appreciate hearing that. It is one of my favorite wines that we make.
Thanks, Troy. He said, you know, he had friends who couldn't come out with us. You guys came out recently. It was nice to meet the four of you. Can they still purchase wine? Yes, of course. Feel free to even give them directly our emails, but any of your friends who are interested in our wines can order online or email us directly. If you have any questions or you want us to introduce ourselves to your friends, we're always happy to do that.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I'd add to that is that you, our patrons, have been our best promoters. And when you take a bottle of wine to a friend's house for dinner, and then your friends call us and say, oh, Roger brought this bottle, or I was at Stephanie's house, you know, it's the word of mouth is so tremendous and has really been a huge part of our success.
I see a couple of questions coming in on the chat. What organic rating do we have? We are certified sustainable. I don't know if you want to speak to the organic practices.
Yeah, we're, as Kate said, we're certified sustainable, but not organic. We did do a trial for about 10 years of farming 20% of the vineyard organically. And although we discontinued that experiment in 2011 after a particularly wet year, we extended several of the tenets of organic farming to the whole property. As you might have noticed in the video, we do under the vine cultivation instead of using herbicides. We seed a cover crop in every other row, which provides the nitrogen we need rather than putting out synthetic nitrogen. And I would just say that we look at every practice and we try to minimize the impact on the environment. And hopefully that's what every farmer does within, you know, within their business and within their criteria.
We had a question about how does the oxygen get into the barrels and affect the wine, and can you control the amount that gets into the barrels?
Thanks, Beth.
His sister. Younger sister.
Wine doesn't migrate through, excuse me, oxygen does not migrate through the wood into the barrel. Wine does evaporate out of the barrel, but there's in fact a vacuum inside of the barrel. So that means no oxygen is getting in, but we do need oxygen during the life of the wine to get it to develop to the point where we want to put it in the bottle. And the way that oxygen gets into the wine is through topping. We top every 2 weeks because we've lost some wine through evaporation. And we do that by taking the bungs out and pouring in about a half a cup of wine. The action of pouring wine into the barrel adds a little bit of oxygen every time we do that. And that plays a very crucial role in how the wine develops in the cellar before we bottle it.
Okay, we have sort of two last questions. Okay, someone asked how many cases we produce a year, and I think that was also answered in the chat at about 12,000. How do you stay close working in the family business?
Like this?
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively. It's a joy to work with each other. This was a tone that was set by our parents that we try and carry on. And we just work to communicate, you know, with each other with as much integrity and honesty as possible and respect.
And are we accepting any new family members? Yeah, yeah. of
Are we
course.
accepting or expecting?
Well, this is accepting. I think
Okay.
we've got some people who want to join, and we do hope more family come. But yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be part of it and to continue building upon what grandmother and grandfather started and what these two, my mom, Julie and Betsy, and all the families working together have started. It's I'm very lucky and get to spend my days with these guys. So the other question that we got by the email beforehand, and I know we're running out of time, so I want to get that one answered, and I'm going to sneak off, is what are the upcoming wines that will be released? How do we expect them to be tasting, and when are they available? So if I can, well, I will let them answer, and I appreciate everyone joining.
So it's scary. Now we're on our own. So we tasted 3 wines. There's 2 more wines that will be released this year. The 2021 Chardonnay and the 2019 Next Red. They'll be released in September when they are 2 and 4 years old, respectively. People who are on the annual tasting program will be receiving those automatically, along with a very small, very practical gift in their tasting package. That's one of the fun things for us about the annual tasting program, is that we have the opportunity to thank people a couple of times during the year for their consistent patronage. It means a lot to us to be in touch with all of you. And so thank you, those of you in Hawaii for having a late lunch, and those of you on the East Coast for staying up and having a late glass of wine after dinner, and everybody in between. And we just want to toast all of you and hope that you have a great summer ahead of you, and we're humbled that some of your summer plans will include Hafner wine. Cheers.
Cheers.